the fiancé who has cold-shouldered me for 3 whole years. At a banquet held in Hong Kong, he proposed to his first love openly. Later, I made a sweet official announcement in my circle of friends. I'm getting married. But he called late at night. Ivana, I never said I would marry you. I smiled and said, I did not say that the groom is you. Later, a set of photos hit the internet, shocking the whole city. The man who holds all the power in Hong Kong City opened his arms and allowed me to jump into his arms, and took the initiative to lower his head and let me kiss him. 1. I changed my dress and stood up. The makeup artist couldn't help but whisper in amazement, Ms. Zhang, you wear this dress can be really beautiful. I softly thanked him and pushed the door out when a small commotion rose downstairs. Inside the huge golden revolving door, my fiancé of 3 years, Zhou Wenyuan, was openly holding a beautiful young woman on his arm. Blatantly appeared with a beautiful young woman on his arm. What's even more ridiculous is that the dress she's wearing is exactly the same as mine. Tonight is the biggest feast in Hong Kong in decades. All the people present are at the top of the pyramid, and they are very smart. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that what I was wearing was nothing more than high-fashion goods. For the first time in 21 years I was dressed up like this. It turned out to be a clown dressed up. 2. Wenyuan, this is next to you. A good person opened his mouth first. Zhou Wenyuan held the hand of the woman beside him. My girlfriend Qin Ku, however, after tonight, is my fiancé. That Ms. Zhang. Zhou Wenyuan looked at me coldly. My marriage contract with the Zhang family has been broken. In these 3 years, the Zhou family has already been merciful to the Zhang family. He was right. Without the $100 million bride price from the original engagement, the Zhang family would have gone bankrupt long ago. My parents and siblings would still be able to continue to live in the same clothes they do now. Zhou Wenyuan got down on one knee and took out a diamond ring to propose to Qin Ku. She cried her eyes out and jumped into Zhou Wenyuan's arms. He tenderly wiped away her tears, coaxed her and kissed her. I watched as Qin Ku was surrounded by the influential wives and ladies, chatting enthusiastically. After tonight, she will no longer be a minor star and a third party to be criticized. And I, Zhang Ivana, in the future in Hong Kong City Zhang family. I'm afraid that there is no place for me in Hong Kong City and the Zhang family. 3. Can you give way? A voice sounded behind me. I turned back. 2 celebrity-looking girls with snacks were looking at me impatiently. I stepped aside to avoid them. Her dress is so bad. Yeah, I don't know what kind of fabric is used for this kind of goods. You'll be allergic if you touch it. Shame on her for standing here. I walked towards the corner resting area with no expression on my face, pretending that I didn't hear their malicious comments. My cell phone rang and I picked it up. My mother's voice came out angrily. Ivana, the Zhou family wants to withdraw from the marriage, and they want $50 million back for the dowry. You can't even get a man's heart for 3 years, what a waste. You'll have to find your own way to pay the $50 million. The Zhang family won't pay a dime. I looked at the hung-up cell phone and felt my heart suffocating. All these bright lights and glamorous clothes have nothing to do with me. I just want to escape. 4. I heard that Mr. Chan returned to Hong Kong yesterday and will come to the dinner tonight. It's not likely. Mr. Chan almost never attends such events. That's true after all. The last time this gentleman made a public appearance was on the main station's news. I pressed down on my aching heart and rummaged through my bag to get my medicine. A rustling noise startled the 2 men who were talking, and the conversation ended abruptly, gradually footsteps away. My heart grew cramped with pain, and the corseted gown strangled me almost to the point of suffocation. I couldn't be bothered to rummage for my medication. I tried to rip open the concealed clasp and take a big breath, but I tried several times without success. Today Mrs. Zhang had someone do my new nails. Exquisite and unusual, but at the critical moment it seemed like it could be fatal. I tilted my face back and took a small breath, my long hair hanging down on the deck in a messy manner, and my lips have gradually become gray. Not far away, the feast was just beginning. My ex-fiancé and his sweetheart were about to dance sweetly together. I, on the other hand, will probably die silently on this quiet deck. 5. Mr. Chen, are you going in at this moment? Chen Zongting didn't answer, but just took the cigarette case handed by his secretary. He took out a light gray cigarette and opened another small, delicate box. The cigarette held between his fingers was not lit, and was lightly dipped into the dark ochre-colored spice powder. He dusted the cigarette again before reaching out to the secretary. The secretary was busy handing over the lighter. Chen Zongting lit the cigarette. "You guys go ahead, I'll finish this cigarette," Chen Zongting said, taking a few steps towards the deck railing. "It's windy here, so be careful." The crowds that surrounded him wisely left one by one. This time when he returned to the harbor, Chen Zongting was bound to go further. From now on, if he said one thing, no one would dare to say another. Tonight's banquet, the organizer had made every effort to invite him to show his face. Originally, he was not interested. But when he came back to Hong Kong yesterday, he was urged by the elders of his family to get married and had a headache. So he simply took the opportunity to steal this leisure. But a cigarette just smoked half. Chen Zongting noticed the slender and frail figure not far away. He thoughts pinched the cigarette, turned around to go, but then heard a muffled sound on the deck. Chen Zongting slowly turned back to look. The moon was dark, and the figure was ambling on the deck, but it was endlessly meandering and provocative. 6. My face has about suffocated green and white like a ghost. The moonlight fell dimly, shining out that face has long lost its beauty, only slightly distorted. I looked at the unfamiliar man in front of me, but it was as if I had grabbed a life-saving driftwood. His sleeve was clutched tightly by me. Survival instinct let me flat out a lot of strength. It actually tore at his arm and landed on my chest. I was breathing so fast that it was scary, my heart rate had already been disturbed. He looked at me as if he understood my discomfort. He actually knelt down on one knee, clutched my wrist bone with his slender fingers, and calmly inquired in a deep voice, "Where is the zipper of the skirt?" I couldn't say anything, struggling to grab his hand again and stick it to my chest. His long eyebrows frowned, removed my hand, and lowered his eyes to look at the neckline of the dress. Immediately afterward, the complicated row of concealed buttons were opened by his fingers. I only felt a lightness around me, and the constraints on my chest and lungs suddenly disappeared. Air rushed in and I breathed in greedily, but completely forgot I today dress close to the body, only in front of the chest pasted petal-like invisible chest stickers. Now the front of the dress is wide open. Long ago was seen to go. 7. It wasn't until the man's suit, wrapped in body heat, fell heavily on me. I snapped out of it. I bit my lip for a moment before looking up with a blush and whispering, "Thank you. Can you stand?" I nodded, clutching the lapel of my suit with one hand and holding onto the fence with the other before I could barely stand. "Do you want me to get you in touch with family or friends?" I shook my head hurriedly. "No, I'll be fine after a short rest." His cell phone suddenly rang a few times. I saw him walk to the side and take out his cell phone to answer it. "I told you, I'll make my own arrangements for the wedding. Don't worry, I won't let Grandpa, his old man, leave with regrets." He looked a bit annoyed and lit a cigarette. The cigarette light went out, reflecting his cold and hard face, and I suddenly remembered that I had seen this man somewhere. At this moment he is also turning back precisely with my line of sight. I was busy lowering my eyes. He collected his cell phone and walked towards me. The smell of the cigarette burning in his hand was a bit heavy. I coughed uncomfortably. "Sorry." He put out his cigarette in a gentlemanly manner and pointed to the suit I was wearing. "Just leave the clothes to the waiter." My face instantly reddened again and I nodded, responding very quietly, "Aha." His eyes fell on my fingers. I was clutching the lapels of his suit. The inner bodice was spread out, the skin of my chest separated only by a silicone chest patch against the delicate lining of the man's suit. It was an ambiguity that no one but me knew about. I held my breasts slightly uncomfortably. As he was about to turn away, he opened his mouth low. "Just now I heard your phone call. Can I make a deal with you?" I boldly raised my eyes to his. Maybe he needed a wife, no trouble, who could disappear at any time. And I needed $50 million for my pathetic freedom. Deal? What kind of deal does Ms. Jiang want to make with me? I was so nervous that I didn't even notice that he even knew my name. "Do you need a wife?" I gathered enough courage and looked at him fixedly. "I won't give you any trouble and will do my best to cooperate with you." Of course, I will never pester you when you don't need one. He looked at me under the moonlight, his silver gray shirt and dark pants wrapped around his lean but upright body. His eyebrows were unsharp, but his jawline was stern. I saw the watch on his wrist, which could about buy this luxury cruise ship I was on. What are your terms? I was stunned for a moment and spoke slowly with some embarrassment. I need $50 million. Usage. I lowered my lashes, not daring to meet his eyes. But in front of a stranger, it was as if I could boldly show my wretchedness and helplessness. My fiancé wants to withdraw from the marriage. He needs to return half of the dowry, $50 million. I can't afford it. I can't afford it. Withdrawal. He looked at me suddenly. His eyes were indescribably sharp. Yes, withdraw from the marriage. I let out a light laugh and raised my face. The sea breeze curled my long hair, and I looked into the depths of the night in confusion. I don't have a way out, sir. 8. I accept the deal, but I have one condition. I looked at him with open eyes in disbelief. Sir, get a license in 3 days. What, so soon? You just heard my phone call. My grandfather is not well and is anxious to see his granddaughter-in-law enter the house. When he finished, he looked at me with a slightly raised eyebrow. Inconvenient. I quickly shook my head. No, it's convenient. Then it's settled. The sea breeze grew stronger, and my long hair was blown into disarray, hitting the side of my face. He suddenly stepped forward and ruffled the messy hair on the side of my face, hanging it behind my ear. I'll have someone pick you up the day after tomorrow. But how do you know where I am? He didn't answer that question, and when he withdrew his hand, it was as if his fingertips lightly brushed against my face. But it seemed like it was just my illusion. He left for a long time. I was still trapped in that kind of extremely inauthentic phantom dream. Until Zhou Wenyuan, who was slightly drunk, suddenly came over and clutched my wrist. Ivana, I've been waiting for you to bow down to me and beg for me for the past 3 years. As long as you're willing to be soft to me like those women, let alone $100 million, I'll give you Jiang family $1 billion. You're drunk, Zhou Wenyuan. I pushed him away with all my might, but a drunkard is really hard to deal with. He stared at me with fishy red eyes, and then stared at the suit I was wearing. Whose clothes are you wearing? It's none of your business, Zhou Wenyuan. None of my business? His handsome face was slightly distorted. Ivana, I want to see who dares to touch my Zhou Wenyuan's woman. He clutched the suit on me with force and ripped it away. I tried to hold on, but it was futile. The sea breeze blew in surging waves, and under the moonlight, a glistening white rose and fell. Jiang Aster. Zhou Wenyuan murmured softly in a daze. The next second, a sharp female voice sounded. Jiang Ivana. You are also too shameless. Oh my God, how could she undress and seduce someone else's fiancé? Mr. Zhou's eyes are looking straight. Qin Ku. Look at the other person's segment. I came back to my senses and tried to cover my lapel in a panic. Qin Ku, however, had already cried and rushed over, raising her hand to hit me in the face. 9. What is this? A deep male voice suddenly rang out flatly. The movement of Qin Ku's hand stalled, and in the next second, she was torn to the side by Zhou Wenyuan. I hastily took a step back and raised my arms to protect my forehead again in a panic. The crowd turned back in unison at the sound, and I don't know who exclaimed, "It's Mr. Chen." Which Mr. Chen? Which one can it be? It's Mr. Chen Zongting Chen. I widened my eyes a little and looked at Chen Zongting behind the crowd. The man who helped me unbutton my corset on the deck. The man who I boldly said I wanted to be his wife and asked him to give me $50 million. He is the famous Chen Zongting of Hong Kong. Chen Zongting only took one look at me before withdrawing his gaze. Then he turned his head sideways and said something to the female secretary beside him. The female secretary immediately walked through the crowd to my side and redraped the suit jacket over me. Miss Jiang, let me take you down to rest first. I stiffly nodded my head and thanked her. As I was helped by her to leave, I couldn't help but look back. The crowd had dispersed quietly, and everyone was standing respectfully with their breath held. Mr. Chen, this is a misunderstanding. Zhou Wenyuan's wine had already sobered up most of the time, and he carefully defended himself. What misunderstanding? Chen Zongting's voice still sounded calm with no signs of anger. I slowly stopped walking and stood at the corner. The secretary did not rush me either, waiting patiently. Zhou Wenyuan's voice trembled a little. Qin Ku was brought by me as my girlfriend. She should have just misunderstood before she lost her temper and moved her hand. Chen Zongting's eyes sank sternly, already carrying a few points of displeasure. I don't think that among the famous women in Hong Kong City today, there will be such an uneducated existence. Zhou Wenyuan was embarrassed, and Qin Ku was already so embarrassed that she was on the verge of crying. Chen Zongting ordered his subordinates, "Send this young lady off the boat." "Wenyuan." Qin Ku cried and tugged on Zhou Wenyuan's sleeve, refusing to let go. She had been in the entertainment industry for several years, so she naturally knew the seriousness of the matter. Being kicked off the boat like this now would soon spread all over Hong Kong. She would be reduced to a laughingstock, with no possibility of turning around again. "Mr. Chen, Xiao Ke knows that she is wrong, so you can give her a chance." Chen Zongting looked at him lightly. Little Mr. Zhou could have gotten off the boat and left together. Zhou Wenyuan closed his mouth and drew his hand back. Qin Ku was quickly taken off the ship. The crowd on deck also dispersed quietly. The farce would end like this, no one would have expected it. "Mr. Chen." The female secretary's voice suddenly pulled my thoughts back. I turned around in surprise. Chen Zongting was walking towards me. He waved his hand for the female secretary to leave and asked me in a warm voice, "Zhang Ivana, are you scared?" I shook my head in a daze. No. I'll take you back to rest first." Chen Zongting raised his hand and gently held my wrist. "Is that okay?" I was dazed and confused. I nodded my head carelessly and was led forward by him. But just after taking 2 steps, I only felt a coldness in my chest. The moment my feet stopped, the nude-colored petal-shaped chest patch fell from the hem of my suit. Chen Zongting turned around, his line of sight following mine to land on the piece of chest patch. 10. I was so embarrassed I almost wanted to touch my head, but he looked as normal, bent down and picked up the piece of chest sticker. After folding it and placing it in his pants pocket, he warmly pacified me. "Dirty cannot be used again. Later I let someone send clean clothes over." My face was hot and red, and I only let out a small "Let's go." Chen Zongting held my hand once again. The corridor wasn't long, and we soon reached the lounge. He sent me in and left with something to do. I sat quietly alone for a while before I could calm down. But after calming down, I only remembered afterward. Chen Zongting had called out to me Miss Zhang in the beginning, and just now the shout was Zhang Ivana. He knows my name? Knows who I am? Just now that female secretary sent over new clothes. I took a shower and changed into clean clothes, and folded Chen Zongting's suit jacket and put it in the bag. I want to dry clean it and return it to him. Mr. Chen ordered that if Ms. Zhang wants to go back, let me personally send you. The female secretary was about 30 to 40 years old and very capable. "Please tell Mr. Chen that I'll take the clothes back to be dry cleaned first. Don't bother Ms. Zhang, just leave it to me." I didn't insist and handed the bag to her, asking as if I didn't mean to, "How does your Mr. Chen know my name?" The female secretary just pursed her lips and smiled. "This is Mr. Chen's personal matter." When I disembarked, I received an unfamiliar text message on my cell phone. "Ivana, this is Chen Zongting, save my number." I looked at the missive for a while before I pursed my lips slightly and replied back, "Okay, saved it. I'll pick you up the day after tomorrow. Take a good rest in the next 2 days." "I'll pick you up the day after tomorrow." 11. He didn't send another SMS. When I returned to Zhang's house, the night was already very late. But everyone was awake, the lights were on, but the atmosphere was depressing and heavy. When she saw me come in, my mother immediately stood up. "Ivana, have you thought about what to do? What the hell is wrong with you? Why did you make Mr. Zhou angry and want to withdraw from the marriage?" "Yes, Ivana, you know that our family depends on the Zhou family's business. How can we afford $50 million? Your sister-in-law is about to give birth to her 3rd child. Aren't you trying to kill us? Everyone is blaming me. Blaming me for not being able to win Zhou Wenyuan's heart, for not being able to marry him, so that I could continue to let them suck their blood and eat their flesh. But in the beginning, when they pushed out my youngest daughter, who had been born sick, because they cared for their eldest daughter, They asked me if I was willing to do it. Did they ever ask me if I was willing? When I took the Zhou family's $100 million bride price to fill in the shortfall to maintain a lavish life, how did I ever enjoy it for a single minute? Now that the Zhou family is backing out of the marriage, they won't take a penny of the $50 million, but they want me to bear it alone. Fine, I'm willing to bear it, but after I do, I won't be a member of the Zhang family anymore. I won't be a member of the Zhang family anymore. 12. Ivana, say something. My sister-in-law stood up and nudged me unhappily. $50 million. I've come up with a solution. You really have a way? I saw my mother's eyes light up immediately. It's just that it might damage the reputation of our Zhang family. What do you mean by that? I laughed very softly. At the dinner tonight, I met a rich Filipino businessman, and after he realized my difficulties, he was willing to pay $50 million for me. However, he has a wife and children, so I can only be his mistress. I really had no choice but to agree. But then, I'll be with him, and we won't be able to hide our relationship. How could you do such a shameless thing? Yes, the Zhang family is a family of scholars. We've had a scholar in our ancestry. If you become a mistress, we'll lose face for the rest of our lives. So what do you suggest? Why don't you sell some of your properties and give $50 million to the Zhou family? No one answered for a while. The crows were silent. Ivana. My father, who hadn't said anything, suddenly opened his mouth. I can't refuse to give the Zhou family $50 million. The Zhang family's face can't be lost either. I deliberately sneered. Then why don't you just disown me as your daughter? My sister-in-law covered her belly and muttered in a low voice. I count on you to be sensible. Let's do it this way. Father finally tapped the board. The Zhang family will announce in the newspaper that they have severed their relationship with me. But it's just a formality. I am still the daughter of the Zhang family, and they will not disown me. I naturally know that this is just a ploy by the Zhang family to coax me. As long as the $50 million is sent to the Zhou family, I will immediately be swept away. But they didn't know that this was exactly the result I wanted. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I received a call from Chen Zongting. Ivana, look at the SMS notification, it should have arrived. I hurriedly opened the text message and sure enough, it was credited 10 minutes ago. It's been received. Today to deal with the withdrawal, I'll have the driver go over to pick you up. Chen Zongting, can I ask you for something? Go ahead. Can you not let anyone know we're getting married for a while? I don't want those greedy vampires of the Zhang family to take the opportunity to pester Chen Zongting, thus adding unnecessary trouble to him. You don't want people to know? No, just for the time being, okay? Okay. Then I'll arrange for someone else to pick you up. When the $50 million is returned to Zhou Wenyuan, the Zhang family will publish a newspaper to cut ties with me. If Chen Zongting wants to get married openly or secretly, no matter what, I'll cooperate with him. At that time, because of the severance of relationship in the first place, the Zhang family won't be able to discuss Chen Zongting no matter what. After transferring the money into Zhou Wenyuan's account, I took pictures of the remittance vouchers and kept them. When Zhou Wenyuan called, I saw the Zhang family's statement of severing ties with me in the revelation column in the newspaper's folder. I stared earnestly at those lines and read them many times, then proceeded to take a picture to keep it, and carefully put the newspaper away again. Zhou Wenyuan's voice was a bit hoarse. Zhang Ivana, where did you get the money? $50 million is not a small amount. The Zhang family can't take it out. Who gave it to you? Say it clearly. None of this has anything to do with you. You received the money. We will have nothing more to do with each other from now on. I was about to hang up the phone. Zhou Wenyuan suddenly called my name. Zhang Ivana, do you think I'm doing this for the $50 million? No matter what you're after, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Ivana, you have to know that if I don't let go, no man in the entire Hong Kong city will dare to take you. I laughed softly on the phone. Really? If you don't believe me, you can try. I didn't want to talk to him anymore and hung up the phone directly. The phone rang again just as I hung up. I was about to pull the plug, but I saw 3 words flashing on the screen. Chen Zongting. 14. The Zhang family wants to cut ties with you? How do you know? I was a little surprised. Chen Zongting is too well informed. Ivana. Huh. You don't have to hold it in if you feel bad. I didn't want to cry at all, really. Since I was a child, I've gotten used to it, so used to it that I've become numb to the point of numbness. I don't feel bad. It's just that when one is cared for, one is always a bit more vulnerable. So with one mouth, the words already had a crying tone in their voice. Ivana, you can cry in front of me after all. Starting tomorrow, I'll be your husband. My tears couldn't help but fall. But before being my husband, I also arranged another identity for you. What identity? I finished timidly in a very small voice. Chen Zongting was silent for half a minute before he said, So, my current identity is a 60-year-old Chinese rich businessman from the Philippines, and you, my mistress? Are you angry? On the phone, he seemed to sigh very softly. Ivana, see you tomorrow. Do you still want to get a license with me? In fact, I just clearly felt that he was a little less happy. Have a good rest today, and come tomorrow in your prettiest dress. 15. Chen Zongting should have made arrangements in advance. So the whole process of getting the license went very quickly. After I got my license, Chen Zongting took me to the hospital first. He held my hand the whole time, which made us both look very much in love. His grandfather was very sick, and only barely smiled at me, quite a bit relieved. I couldn't help but feel a little bad in my heart. To have to deceive a dying old man like that. He must love this excellent grandson very much. Looking forward to him to couple harmony it. But I don't know, I can't even be considered Chen Zongting's real wife. When I left the hospital, Chen Zongting had a very important meeting to attend, so he let the driver send me back to get my luggage. The driver is an old chauffeur used by the Chen family, who has watched Chen Zongting grow up. He has gray hair, but is still hale and hearty. Zhang's family saw him get down from the car and helped me open the door. All coincidentally decided that this is about my gold master. No one paid any attention to me because they despised my status as a mistress nowadays. I came down from upstairs with my suitcase. Only my father said something to me. This is only a stopgap measure. You will move out for a while. Ivana, we'll pick you up again when the storm has passed. I purposely asked him in a pitiful manner. How long do we have to wait? Depends on the situation. Then you have to keep your word. Don't worry about it. As I dragged my suitcase away, it was obvious that everyone in the Zhang family breathed a sigh of relief. The driver dropped me off at Chen Zongting's private residence. The mansion wasn't too big, but the environment was very tranquil. There were also no groups of nannies or servants in sight, which made me feel relaxed. Ma'am, sir has previously instructed for you to make yourself at home. He will be back in time for the evening. But at 8 o'clock in the evening, I received a call from Chen Zongting. He had to go back to the mainland for a very important meeting and wouldn't be back until about a week later. If you're bored, ask your friends to go out for shopping and tea, don't stay home all day. Then I'll go to my small apartment for a few days. It's close to Central and convenient to do anything. I'll pick you up when I get back. Okay. 16. On the third day of Chen Zongting's business trip, the volunteer who had volunteered with me before called me. I was invited to attend a small charity auction in a circle of celebrities. I was very interested in the theme this time, a charity fundraiser for sick children with congenital heart disease. When I arrived, I saw quite a few familiar faces. Among them was Qin Ku. It's just that although she was still dressed up today, she obviously didn't look too good. It seems that being kicked off the ship that day had a greater impact on her than I had imagined. Qin Ku also saw me, but she just sneered and pulled the people around her to talk. Is it true what you said? She went to be a mistress. Of course it's true. Her parents were so ashamed of her that they published a newspaper to cut ties with her. Didn't you read the newspaper? I heard that her boss is almost 80 years old. He's more than enough to be her grandfather. Oh my God! How can you invite such a person to do charity work? Yes, we don't want to participate in an event with such a person. Let's ask her to leave. The scene was getting chaotic, and the celebrity who invited me also had an embarrassed look on her face. Ivana, why don't you attend next time? I didn't want to make things difficult for anyone and took the initiative to get up and prepare to leave. Unexpectedly, just as I reached the door, I bumped into Zhou Wenyuan. Jiang Ivana? I ignored it and continued to walk out. Zhou Wenyuan, however, took hold of my wrist. Are you here to see me? I withdrew my hand. Not really. I just heard about you today. Zhou Wenyuan blocked my way again. Zhang Ivana, return the money. Why? I couldn't help but sneer. Isn't $50 million what you wanted? Ivana. Zhou Wenyuan's face was a bit gloomy and not worried. I said, as long as you soften to me once. How? I pushed him away once again. Want me to grovel before you as well and thank you for your gifts like a dog? It's funny to say that no one knows what the seemingly honorable young son of the Zhou family. In private, his favorite thing to do is to use money and power to wantonly trample on people. My life is not worth much, but I'm not willing to be humiliated like that. 17. Ivana, you are now notorious, so think about the consequences of your actions. Zhou Wenyuan changed the subject. If you are young and become a mistress, your reputation will be ruined for the rest of your life. It's my choice. Ivana, I'm giving you an excuse. Is that so? I just don't need it anymore. I walked around him and continued to walk out. Zhou Wenyuan's voice sounded low behind me. Zhang Ivana, I'm only giving you one more chance. Come to me when you've thought it through. I did not turn around. But that night, I received a call from my landlord. He ordered me to move out overnight. I didn't tangle with him much and packed up my belongings and went downstairs. But I didn't expect to see Chen Zongting's car just as I went downstairs. The driver got out and took my boxes. Ma'am, it's Mr. who asked me to pick you up and take you back. Chen Zongting. Is he back yet? Mr. Chen Zongting will be back on his flight early tomorrow morning. I felt my eyes suddenly become sore and swollen. Is he done with all his work? Originally promised a week, this is only the 4th day. Mister, I'm afraid that you're not at ease, I said. I'm fine, his work is important, don't delay it for me. I sat in the car, but my heart was in a mess. I couldn't tell you what kind of complicated feeling I had. It was as if I was abandoned by the whole world. But suddenly I was in possession of a gold mine that could rival any country. When I arrived at Chen Zongting's place, I just went back to my room. His phone call came over. Zhang Ivana. Chen Zongting's voice still had a bit of weariness in it. I suddenly felt incredibly ashamed. In order to get rid of the Zhang family, I deliberately smeared my reputation like this. He works such a heavy and hard job, yet I still add to his chaos from time to time. If I had honestly stayed in his house, none of this crap would have happened. Chen Zongting is sorry. Zhang Ivana. Chen Zongting seemed a bit helpless. I don't mean to blame you. Forget it. I'll talk to you properly when I come back tomorrow. After hanging up the phone, there was one more friend request in WeChat. It was from Chen Zongting, so I clicked through. There was only one entry in his friend circle posted 3 days ago, with only one photo. Our marriage license. I couldn't see what those people commenting below said. I could only see the 2 comments he replied to his friends. Well married. Introducing my wife Zhang Ivana. 18. That night I also posted a friend circle with only 4 simple words. Getting married. Many people left me messages asking about it and some friends called me. When I picked up, it was Zhou Wenyuan's voice. What? Have you figured it out? I did say I'd give you a chance, but I never said I'd marry you. I couldn't help but laugh lightly. I didn't say the groom was you either. You're marrying that old man? Ivana, you're so self-sacrificing that you'd rather commit yourself to a married man. I directly hung up the phone to pull the black. That night my heart seemed to be loaded with a lot of things, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. It was only when it was almost dawn that I went to sleep. So much so that I didn't even know that Chen Zongting had returned home. When I opened my eyes, I saw a figure coming out of the bathroom. I was so scared that I almost screamed out, my heart almost popping out. It's me, Ivana. I'm Chen Zongting, don't be afraid. I pressed down my wildly beating heart, my face still a little pale. Chen Zongting took me in his arms and gently stroked my back. Breathe slowly, don't be nervous, relax. It's okay, Zhang Ivana. I crouched in front of his chest for a while before I slowly calmed down. After calming down, I realized with a jolt. I was only wearing a silk nightgown and Chen Zongting, fresh from the shower, was still bare-chested and only wearing a pair of pajama pants. I'm fine. I spoke in a small voice with a red face, gently getting out of his arms. Sorry for scaring you. Chen Zongting straightened my messy hair. What took you so long to sleep? I had a bit of insomnia last night. I was a bit uncomfortable. My pajamas are light and thin. I always sleep without underwear. Just now, I was held tightly in his arms like that, only separated by a thin layer of fabric. My face burned like a fever, grasping the quilt, wanting to wrap myself up, but also feeling a little lustful. When I didn't know what to do, Chen Zongting helped me lie back down. Sleep a little longer anyway. It's almost noon. Why don't we just go straight to lunch? He naturally covered me with the thin quilt. I'm going to the study. I'll come and call you later. Watching him go out, I was relieved and let out a soft breath. 19. During the day it was fine. He spent most of his time in the den working on work stuff. It's just that at 9 o'clock at night, when he comes back to the master bedroom, he has no intention of leaving. In fact, I have thought about the matter of fulfilling conjugal obligations after marriage. After all, it was also myself who had promised in the first place that I would cooperate with all his needs. I watched Chen Zongting come out of the bathroom, hesitation for a long time, or gently asked out, "Are you sleeping here tonight?" Chen Zongting looked at me and did not speak. My heart is messy thinking, maybe Chen Zongting just needs a nominal wife. Maybe I'm overthinking myself. I hugged a pillow and got out of bed, tentatively speaking. Then I'll go sleep in the guest room? He still didn't say anything. I hugged my pillow and turned around to walk out. After a few steps, I was hugged from behind. Didn't you say that you would fully cooperate with my needs? Chen, Mr. Chen. My spine was pressed against his sturdy chest, feeling his heart beating vigorously. The temperature of his skin seemed to be climbing as well, burning me a little dizzy. Chen Zongting lowered his head, his fingers ruffling the hair snaking around my neck. Ivana, you are my wife now. I leaned into his arms and gently closed my eyes. My entire body softened, allowing him to pick me up and place me on the soft bed. My fingers clutched his small arms as he leaned down to kiss me. The heart was beating so fast that it seemed like it was going to run out of oxygen. The kiss inevitably became broken. Tell me if you're uncomfortable anywhere. Chen Zongting touched my flushed face, and only after my heartbeat gradually calmed down did he continue to the next step. There were several times when I really felt like I was about to suffocate, but Chen Zongting always managed to restrain himself from stopping at the right time. I could feel the taut muscles on his body trembling vaguely. The beads of sweat on his forehead smashed down and landed on my chest, burning and rolling. His heart was beating so violently too, and he was breathing heavily. It was hard for me, and it seemed harder for him than it was for me. Ivana. His voice was slightly hoarse as he leaned over and gently kissed my face. Feeling any better? I shook my head and nodded. The bottom of my eyes were already in a daze, and my hands clung to his neck at some point, like pushing back but more like catering. His eyes were filled with lust. There is so brief a moment I even have a kind of Chen Zongting-like me illusion. Ivana. He leaned down again, his force getting heavier. At the end it was as if I lost consciousness for 2 seconds, but it didn't hurt like the previous onset. Instead, my entire body was like floating on a cloud, wrapped in a soft cloud. Until Chen Zongting woke me up. Ivana, is there anything wrong? I shook my head once again and just gently reached out and hugged his waist. Women seem to have a natural dependence on their first man. Chen Zongting wrapped me in his arms. Rest for a while, then take a bath, he said. His finger fell on my heart. Is it hard on the heart? It's okay. I thought of the several stops in the middle. Couldn't help but ask him in a small voice. Chen Zongting, will you be uncomfortable? He held my face and kissed it down. His voice was deep and hoarse. If you keep asking, you're really going to be uncomfortable. Don't. Okay, don't. But he didn't let go of me. I just want to kiss Aster. I stopped talking and obediently let him kiss me. What was going through my mind in a daze was, he seemed to really dote on me when he called me Ivana. But for someone as serious and self-restrained as him, at most he would only call me that in bed. 20. I didn't have the chance to verify this guess of mine, because early the next morning, Chen Zongting went out early again. I knew that he was extremely busy. After all, being in such a position, there were many big and small things to do. I also obediently stayed at home, try not to give him any more trouble. Though I didn't go out, the days were extraordinarily quiet and serene. This was the first time I felt the beauty of the quietness of the years since I grew up to the age of 21. Not having to worry about being given away like a commodity by my family. No need to be hurt by the favoritism of my parents and family. No need to think about anything, just do what makes you happy. I even picked up my piano, which I'd lost for years. And bought a drawing course online and started learning oil painting. I stayed at home for almost a week. One afternoon, Chen Zongting suddenly called me, saying that there was a party for me to attend in the evening. He had already prepared the dress and jewelry, and a team of stylists would come to the house later. Are you going to go in the evening? I'll go straight over to you after I'm done. What kind of party is it? Do I have to go? It's a charity fundraiser for children with congenital heart defects. I think you'll want to go. I couldn't help but be touched by the fact that the last charity fundraiser that Chen Ku maliciously spread black information, and thus couldn't attend, was also prepared for children with congenital heart disease. It turned out that Chen Zongting still remembered this matter. Because I was born with a bad heart, I have always been concerned about this aspect. I also remember that after getting engaged to Zhou Wenyuan, I still thundered to volunteer every month to visit the sick or disabled children in the orphanage. But Zhou Wenyuan once sneered at me. The thing of selling reputation, you do it skillfully. But he didn't realize that I didn't do it for fame. I just wanted to help more children like me because I had suffered so much. Chen Zongting, of course I am willing to attend, just if you come over at night, our matter cannot be hidden. I want to ask him, will it cause you trouble or not very good influence? Ivana, from the very beginning, the person who said they wanted to keep it quiet for a while was you, not me. Chen Zongting. I clutched my cell phone and murmured softly with some confusion. I don't quite understand why. Why he would promise me. Why he never wanted to hide the fact that he was marrying me. Why in favor of me. I'll answer you when I get home tonight. 21. When I arrived at the dinner scene, I naturally attracted countless strange looks. It was only what made me slightly puzzled. Since Chen Zongting would be attending the charity banquet, the natural specifications were extraordinary. The Zhou family was able to get on board, but the Jiang family definitely couldn't. But Zhou Wenyuan was there, and so was the Jiang family. When I entered, the Jiang family was warmly flanking Zhou Wenyuan, and my one mother's own sister, Jiang Lan, was looking at Zhou Wenyuan with shy and sizzling eyes. Jiang Ivana, why do you have the face to come too? After Jiang Lan opened her mouth in surprise, Mrs. Jiang immediately walked over with a sullen face. Jiang Ivana, what kind of occasion is this? Don't you know? You came here to disgrace yourself. What will people think of our Jiang family? I looked at the elegant and dignified noblewoman in front of me. My heart was no longer rippling. Didn't you already publish the newspaper to break off the relationship? So, I don't have any relationship with the Jiang family, and I can't be ashamed of the Jiang family. But your name is still Jiang. Who in Hong Kong doesn't know that you're my daughter? Then what do you think we should do? Ivana, leave Hong Kong. Let your money man take you abroad, or go back to the Philippines. Didn't Dad promise me that he would let me come back when the storm passed? Mrs. Jiang looked at me as if I were a fool. What are you whimsical about? You've already been removed from the Jiang family tree. Really? Of course it's true. That means I have nothing to do with the Jiang family, legally or in terms of kinship? Yes. Good. I turned to look around. I'm sure everyone heard what Mrs. Jiang said. Ivana, you'd better hurry up and leave. Why do you have to make a scene until you lose face? Jiang Lan pretended to be gentle and generous. The Zhou family's young gentleman is also there. Don't let people see the joke go. Zhou Wenyuan also opened his mouth at this time. Jiang Ivana, didn't you say you're getting married? Mr. Zhou, he has a wife and son in the Philippines, and there are mistresses all over the world, so how could he really marry her? So your friend circle that day was fake? I just wanted to say something, but Zhou Wenyuan had already taken a step forward and clutched my arm. Jiang Ivana, I'm going to ask you one more time. Before he finished speaking, the banquet hall suddenly fell silent. Mr. Chen is here. Why would Mr. Chen come to such a small banquet? I don't know, but I've really made a fortune tonight, seeing Mr. Chen in person. Why is Mr. Chen coming this way? Oh my God, Mr. Chen keeps looking in this direction. Is that the Jiang family's Miss Jiang? Seemingly hearing these comments, Jiang Lan's face quickly turned red. Mrs. Zhang's face also took on an undisguised look of joy. I turned back to Chen Zongting. He was still wearing black business attire and looked very serious and unapproachable. At this moment I couldn't help but be in a trance. This man that I once only saw on TV and in the newspaper now is my husband. He kissed me many times, he called me Ivana. He was really gentle with me, very much like a special husband. Ivana. Chen Zongting opened his mouth. This was the first time he called me by my name in public. Not Ivana, but intimate and private Ivana. 22. The smile on Zhang Lan's face was somewhat comically fixed. Mrs. Zhang was also somewhat stunned. Zhou Wenyuan was even more stunned. I shook off his hand with force, and the bottom of my slightly red eyes had already taken on an aggrieved look. Chen Zongting. He walked through the crowd and straight to me. Today's dress is very pretty. The makeup is also very suitable for you. Very beautiful. Chen Zongting. I wanted to cry and laugh. When my tears were about to fall, Chen Zongting took me in his arms in front of everyone. Well, I'm only a few minutes late and you're being bullied. When he said the word bullying, his gaze swept over the crowd very faintly. Mrs. Zhang's face turned pale, and Zhang Lan subconsciously ducked behind her. Chen Zongting's gaze finally landed on Zhou Wenyuan's face. Young Sir Zhou, what were you chatting with my wife just now? The word wife in Chen Zongting's words was comparable to a bomb. The crowd that was originally dead silent immediately couldn't control a jarring discussion. Zhou Wenyuan seemed to be a bit unconvinced and spoke in a daze. Mrs. Yes, Zhang Ivana is my Chen Zongting's wife. As soon as Chen Zongting's words fell, Mrs. Zhang suddenly snapped out of her senses and took a few steps to me, pulling my arm intimately. Ivana, you child, such a big happy event. Why don't you tell mom to know it? I pushed her hand away. Mrs. Zhang, I am no longer a member of the Zhang family. Mrs. Zhang was stunned, busy saying, this biological mother and daughter where there is no overnight enmity, we mother and daughter two misunderstandings to talk about it is also good. I shook my head. There is nothing to say, I and the Zhang family, there is no half a bit of relationship, genealogy is evidence. Mrs. Zhang was anxious and sweating, and eagerly looked at Chen Zongting. Mr. Chen, look, our Ivana is very childish, and I'm still angry with me. I'll listen to your wife. Chen Zongting wrapped his arms around me, his voice cold. Ivana said that there is no relationship with the Zhang family. Then there is no relationship. Mr. Chen. Mrs. Zhang was like a dead woman. Mrs. Zhang. Chen Zongting suddenly opened his mouth. As far as I know, in the past 10 years, the Zhang family has not donated a penny to charity. When Mrs. Zhang heard this, she immediately sweated like a pig in a poke, stiffly trying to argue, but unable to say a word. So you haven't donated a penny? Then why do the Zhang squeeze their heads into every charity dinner? To make a name for themselves. Shame on you. Mrs. Zhang couldn't face staying any longer and left in a mess with Zhang Lan. Chen Zongting grabbed me. Ivana, let's go home too. Have not yet donated to the children. I reminded him in a low voice. Chen Zongting lowered his head and kissed me. The secretary is going. 23. Chen Zongting. My heart, it's dying. In the dimly lit chamber, I only felt a wave of dizziness. The familiar feeling of oxygen deprivation hit me. I clutched his arm and turned my face away to breathe heavily. Chen Zongting sank down, his forehead resting lightly against mine. Ivana, I can feel that he is having a hard time at the moment. But in favor of his own body, this is not competitive. Chen Zongting. Or you marry a healthy wife. Zhang Ivana. The bottom of Chen Zongting's eyes was a rare and serious. There is no shortage of healthy women under the sky. But I'm like this. What's wrong with you? He ruffled the wet forehead hair on my forehead. Ivana, in my eyes, you are the best. Chen Zongting. If you're not well, we'll take our time and cure you. If you can't cure you in Hong Kong, we'll go to Beijing, Shanghai, or overseas. What if it still can't be cured? Chen Zongting leaned down and kissed me very tenderly. Then I will abstain from sexual intercourse and cultivate my body, just in time to unify my family and rule the country. 24. When the new year was approaching, Chen Zongting finally had some time to spare. He took me to Beijing, where the best cardiac surgeons are said to be. I was a little nervous when I went for the checkup. Let's just do the best we can and listen to God's will, he said. Chen Zongting habitually helped me fix my hair. Go on, I'll be right here waiting for you. After all the exhaustive and professional examinations were done, the old expert with all white hair looked at me with some sighs. I've read your examination report. You are considered to be one of the congenital heart disease patients who are not considered serious. If you had timely surgical intervention when you were a child, you would have recovered long ago. I looked at the doctor incredulously and shook my head repeatedly. Doctor, are you mistaken? Since I was a child, my family has told me that I can't be cured. They took me to many hospitals, all saying the same thing. I no longer wanted to go to the hospital, no longer wanted to listen to myself being sentenced to death over and over again. They told me I could only spend money on such a careful upbringing, and that it was thanks to them that I had survived and grown up. When Chen Zongting held me in his arms, I realized that I was unknowingly shedding tears. They lied to me, didn't they? Why did they lie to me? Why did they do this to me? If they didn't want to cure me, they could have thrown me away, given me away. Why did they lie to me? Lie to me for so many years? Ivana, don't think about these questions. You can regain your health, that's more important than anything. You know? I just can't figure it out. Chen Zongting hugged me more tightly. Then don't think about those meaningless things, let's look forward, don't look back. 25. When the spring flowers bloomed, Mr. Chen Zongting came to pick me up and brought me back to Hong Kong. I had already been discharged from the hospital and was recuperating well. A few days ago, his grandfather was critically ill, and he returned to Hong Kong overnight to go to the hospital. Until the day before yesterday, the old man again broke through the ghost gate. The condition stabilized, he put down his heart. He and I have not seen each other for half a month. Chen Zongting stepped out of the car, but did not walk towards me. We made a promise. When we meet again, I'll run to his side. Like every healthy girl. He opened his arms. I took my skirt and ran down the steps, through the green and yellow of the garden, running lightly in the spring breeze. For the first time in 21 years I ran like this. Even the slightly cold spring breeze was warm. I do not care to jump into his arms. I raised my face to kiss him. But today I wear flat shoes, he is too tall. I could only stand on tiptoe. But he lowered his head and met my kiss. 26. I've been married to Chen Zongting for almost a year now. But that night was the first time I'd seen him indulge himself. He kissed the scars on my chest, the marks from the surgery still clear and somewhat ugly. I didn't want him to see it and raised my hand to cover it. But Chen Zongting refused. Will it be ugly? As beautiful as that night. So you've been coveting me from the start. No, earlier than you think. When was that? Have you seen me before? Ivana, are you sure you want to catch up with your husband at this time? Chen Zongting clasped my hands and leaned down again. Chen Zongting. I'm so dizzy I can't breathe. I did the same thing again. Naturally, he didn't believe me, but he still stopped at the most intense moment. My heart was beating fast, but it wasn't tearing as much as it was cramping. The only thing that was booming in my chest was the uncontrollable tide of love. I took the initiative to wrap myself around him and lightly bit his chin. Chen Zongting, you don't have to worry about my body anymore. From now on, you can do whatever you want. I've seen Chen Zongting's serious look when he was giving a report at the Bay Area conference. I've also seen him in the office at a cross-country conference, fluent in English, French, and Cantonese. In his private life, he is also easygoing and relaxed. The maids even dared to joke with him on a daily basis. But as soon as he restrains his smile, the people around him will immediately be silent. At this moment, he has a clear look of desire and strength in his eyes. In the bottom of his eyes, there is a clear desire and strong possessiveness. He let himself sink into lust and fell into the world with me. In the endless pleasures, he seems to be more indulgent and devoted than I am. I didn't understand why my closest relative would do this to me. Later I realized. All the suffering and aggravation of those 21 years was just for me to meet Chen Zongting again. Chen Zongting, are you? This was the first time I asked, and before I finished, Chen Zongting seemed to know what I was going to ask. His kisses fell on my ear, and his hot and wet fingers were tightly entangled with mine. I heard his voice, slightly hoarse and low, tantalizing. Ivana, I like you.